Bipartisanship is how things get done in Washington, but the climate isn't very compromise-friendly these days. RFD-TV's Marlon Bowling shares two farm state lawmakers' efforts to come together.
Last year, Republican Representative Dusty Johnson from South Dakota and Democrat Abigail Spanberger from Virginia talked about their willingness to work across the aisle. This year, we're getting their perspective again, and the consensus is things aren't great.
The entire environment rewards rancor and toxicity and one-party solutions. And so it is really difficult. I'll be honest, it's really difficult for those of us who believe in bridge building and common ground. It's harder today for us to conduct our work.
I do want to agree with everything that Dusty just said. It is far more challenging here on Capitol Hill than it was in our first term. There's a gulf at times between parties.
As members of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus, these two congresspeople have developed a reputation for working together.
And so Dusty and I work on a lot of different issues legislatively because we both work on the Ag Committee, because we also have, some similar priorities, but we certainly don't agree on everything. And that's fine. We don't need to agree on everything, but we certainly agree on issues related to livestock production and supply chain issues and telehealth priorities.
But not every bill impacts large swaths of the population. So convincing colleagues to compromise on major legislation isn't easy.
When I talk to my colleagues about some of these smaller singles and doubles that are bipartisan basis, it's hard when the triples and home runs have been predominantly one-party solutions for me to convince leadership that a totally different mindset is required for the singles and doubles. It doesn't mean that it's not work worth doing. It just is acknowledging the difficulty in doing so.
And not to mention, and this is, of course, before you and I got here, Dusty, but then it's, well, when they had the majority, they did.
Right. Right.
They did this.
Exactly.
They didn't want to work with us then.
Even with the finger pointing, these two hope they're leading by example.
Abigail and I were leaders on a cattle contract library that passed out of the Ag Committee a few weeks ago unanimously. Mm-hmm. And there's a pretty good shot that we'll be able to get that through the House by the end of the year. That's remarkable.
The bottom line is it matters. It matters to the cattlemen across Virginia. It matters to the cattlemen in South Dakota. It's impactful legislation if you are impacted by it. And I think that gets at the heart of what we try to do is find places where we can have impact on the people we represent and, Americans across the board and do it.
So what can voters do to get more out of these outcomes?
Vote for candidates that do not prey on your fear and anger.
Spend a little bit of time reading about what your candidates or what your elected representatives have done. Listen to them. And to Dusty's point, vote for the ones that are focused on being productive and telling you what they will do and what they will focus on and not who they're not in an effort to vilify the other side kind of across the board.
For RFD-TV, I'm Marlon Bowling.
And that conversation took place on the Wherever John May Roam podcast from the National Corn Growers. Head to ncga.com to hear more.